Hello there, men, and welcome to the Masculinism Movement channel, a place for men to be men and to talk about masculinity and men's issues. I'm your host, Brian Krall, and today I want to talk to you about the concept of masculine image and the men's suit. The male image is something I've mentioned as being an element of masculinity, that there's a general idea from culture to culture of what looks masculine. And so I'm going to address the topic of a masculine image from my modern Western standpoint, being a New Yorker, and talk about the idea of the classic contemporary male image and the men's suit. Now, I'm not a fashion expert or fashionista or anything like that. The world of fashion is a constantly moving and pretty ridiculously wasteful place. Basically, it's the opposite of minimalistic or conservational because it's an industry, so it wants to sell products and make money. And to do that, fashion designers put out all new lines of clothes every season because as a business they need to maximize profits by making people consume more and more things. And that part of the world is also dominated by women and gay men. So traditional masculine men generally don't care about these, seasonal clothing lines and different clothing trends and buying lots of new and different clothes all the time, one for every possible occasion. And if you are too fashion forward as a man, you might get mistaken as being a metrosexual or a gay guy, or worse, accidentally be doing something that doesn't look good, like mismatching colors. So, there was a trend where it was fashionable to mismatch colors for some time, but only the people who were into the trends knew about that, so they sort of looked bad to everyone else. So that's just one of the reasons why it's not that good to be too fashion forward, and why the best look for a man is what I call the contemporary classic male image, a style that is conservative and retro, but not too conservative or retro. It is still contemporary and modern enough, of course, but it is a timeless look. The outfit that we now call the suit, and essentially a suit is a pair of pants or what are called trousers or slacks, and a coat that are cut from the same cloth, worn together with a button-down shirt and ideally a tie. Though it could more loosely be used just to mean an outfit that is made up of pants, shirt, coat, and probably another piece, like maybe a vest or tie. It's an extremely old traditional ensemble for a man to wear. It actually goes back hundreds of years. It was influenced by a combination of the French royal court military culture and dandy culture, which was a counterculture made up of the highly fashionable gentlemen of the time. And it didn't mean that they were gay or anything, just basically rich and high society, as well as other cultural influences that would be more specific to the specific time and place. And the suit has changed over the centuries, and what we think of as a suit today, like what I'm wearing, is a sort of style that's been popular for about the past 100 years, the past century or so. So it is a very old tradition, an almost timeless look. And a good suit is something that has a very long life and can last almost forever, especially with proper care and tailoring as needed. So while the seasons change for women and gay men and other fashion-forward people out there who So while the seasons change and women and gay men and other fashion-forward people out there are buying new clothes for every season, a good suit that you treat right should be a constant throughout the years. You should not need to keep buying new clothes when you don't really need them just to be more and more fashionable. I mean, if you actually need new clothes, then that's one thing. But just buying new clothes because there are newer, trendier clothes out, that you see and you like, it's just rampant consumerism and something that is a female tendency to get caught up in and men should avoid. And it's just unnecessary. All right. I mean, if I were to keep buying new suits every fucking season just because I saw new ones that I didn't have and liked the look of, I'd be having to constantly get larger and larger apartments with more and more closet space to store up all these suits that I didn't actually wear, which is exactly what women do. I ended up spending a fortune on superfluous suits just to have a narcissism festival and play dress up for no reason other than to take pictures and post them on social media, which is, again, exactly what women do. But suits are expensive and are meant to last, not to be worn once and then to become clutter like women's cheap clothes. Suits are made to last a long time. The suits that I wear are not new. Most of them are well over a decade or maybe even two old. Many of them are family heirlooms that my father wore when he was my age, or even my grandfather. The oldest coats that you see me wearing here are actually about 75 years old and were purchased by my grandfather in the late 40s or early 50s. Just think about that. Some of the suit coats I've worn here in front of you were bought by my dead grandfather 75 plus years ago, and they still look good today. Several other coats were purchased by my father in the 70s through the 90s, and then given to me when I graduated high school 2 decades ago. And I can wear all of these today, and they still look great. Well-made suits last decades or generations even. And unless it was made in a very specific style, it won't go out of style. You can even find great suits at thrift stores if you do not have the money to buy them new. And we'll oftentimes find better ones there that were made with better material back then, like wool, as opposed to cheap modern poly blends. And this contemporary classic look of the men's suit can pull its style from any era in the last century or so and still look good on a man, because it will be in some way expressing what was thought of at one time or another to be an exemplary male image. For instance, you could wear a vest like they did in the early 1900s, as I often do. Or you could go more business casual and even, pair a suit coat or a nice shirt with a pair of nice designer denims, like started to become the fashion around the year 2000, and it's sort of like the George Clooney style. Or you could go a bit fancy and wear a shirt with a different collar color and with French cuffs for cufflinks, like I like to do sometimes, and pair a fancy tie with a matching fancy pocket square, like I always do, of course. Love my pocket squares. Or you could keep it simple and classy by going with the 50s style look, doing a simple plain black suit with plain white shirt and a thin black tie. Or you could go just one step beyond that with a more 80s style look with the colored shirt and tie that are both the same solid color and closely match the coat and pants to that color, like Sam Rothstein in Casino, the character played by Robert De Niro, did. I think it is just a really great, classy, just refined, sophisticated look for a man. Or you could go with a double-breasted suit, which were popular in the 90s, like with the power suits back then, like ones my dad wore. I loved those. Double-breasted suits are such a strong, powerful look for a man, and all of these looks really are ones that I personally love and think are just iconic masculine images that still look great today, will always look great. And you can choose to keep it minimalistic and just stick with suits and shirts, or you can accessorize as well. But even without accessories and with just suits and shirts, there are enough different colors and patterns and ways of matching them up to form many different outfits out of just a handful of suits and shirts. So you don't need to accessorize. I mean, a nice suit looks good enough on its own, and so if you get a suit that is well made with the right materials and it fits you good, and you create a good outfit, that is really all you need. And if you have the money, you can get something custom tailored for you. If you can afford it, it will look great on you because, again, it will fit even better. And even if it's a minimalistic suit, it will still look really great because of how it was custom made. Okay, and when doing things like that, or accessorizing, or just doing whatever it is you want to do to dress up and look really nice, it's important to know that men's fashion really should be minimalistic and functional over fancy and flamboyant. All right, so you don't need to tie your tie in some sort of fancy, superfluous way, or wear multiple handkerchiefs exploding out of your pocket with multiple colors and some sort of rainbow volcano look, or to have a super wide brim hat with a ton of feathers on it. You're gonna end up looking like a pimp from the 70s. You don't need to be wearing a zoot suit or anything like that. Okay. So there's certainly a line where doing too much just makes you start to look silly. You don't want to be flamboyant or overly fancy or be seen as trying to be flashy. It's much better to be seen as modest. All right, you're going to look better if you look modest rather than flamboyant. As the phrase contemporary classic goes, my philosophy is that men's fashion should be contemporary but classic, and conservative, not progressive or too liberal or radical, so to speak. So what this means is that you don't want to be too extreme with it, and you shouldn't be too forward thinking either. Instead, you should err more on the side of retro just to be safe. Because things do go out of style, but you can always bring them back, and it is better to be dressed in a way that was at least in style at some point, but is a little bit outdated, than being too fashion forward and, again, really only being thought of as in style by gay guys and fashionistas and certain females who are in the fashion world. But again, people are probably going to look on you as being gay and metrosexual, and it's just not a very masculine way to look. So by way of a for instance, the double-breasted suit coat went out of style, but I kept wearing mine because I loved the way they looked. And a lot of men would compliment how business-like I looked. And only one bitchy woman I worked with ever told me that it wasn't in style anymore. Like, that's gone out of style. And this is a much better situation than, for instance, when I was a nightclub promoter, and I often tried dressing in very fashion-forward ways, and people often thought I was gay. And I was actually out to pick up chicks, right? So imagine my frustration at that when I'm dressed in a way that I think is really cool and progressive. I'm hitting on a girl, and at some point she goes, wait, I thought you were gay. So this is why retro is always better than being progressive. It's always better to be more conservative. And even if things go out of style, it's usually only briefly. Everything makes a comeback at some point. Even if something's not in style now, it is more likely to make a comeback that you could help start than it is for you to create a new trend from scratch that is totally different from what has already been normalized in your culture, right? So it's safer to go with something that already has been in style. than try to bring something into style that has never been in style yet. So that is where you're going to definitely come off as looking either ridiculous in the worst case scenario, or in the best case scenario, you'll look like a fashionista. Right? Or in between that, you might look metro or gay, and that's no good for you if you're hetero. You want to stay away from looks that make you look gay or feminine. All right? Of course, in order to cultivate a masculine image, your suit should be considered traditionally masculine in your culture, and you should stay away from feminine looks or looks that make you look gay. And you have to be aware of this, even if you are a forward-thinking person. All right? As it often tends to happen, the more we delve into fashion, that the more we tend to reach certain lines that we may not see, but others will. Right? And there's certain lines you don't want to cross. So for instance, you wouldn't want to wear a kilt in America, even though a traditionally masculine man would wear that in Scotland. It is not socially intelligent to wear a kilt in America, or it would just look like a skirt and make you look like you're trying to make some sort of LGBTQ fashion statement or something. And while you should avoid doing things that are too effeminate, you should also be comfortable enough in your masculinity to do something like wearing a more feminine seeming color, like pink, peach, or lavender shirts, right? And not be worried that it might look feminine on you, okay? In fact, you notice I wear these shirt colors at times, and not masculine colors like green, yellow, and orange, because those colors look tacky. And the more feminine colors look nice and classy. And it's best to have your colors be on the cooler side rather than the brighter side as well, because you do not want your outfit to be too loud, all right? And I notice that as a man, I tend to go with a lot of blacks and navy blues and grays and browns and other earth tones for my coats and suits. These are what I consider to be masculine colors, and I've found that they go well with some of the more feminine colored shirts. So kind of like how yin and yang go together, masculine and feminine colors tend to balance each other well and thus are very easy on the eye together. So you'll see there's often a reason why we do everything when putting together a good outfit, and that's what makes it functional. Men's fashion should be functional above being showy. For instance, things like vests and hats were more popular before central heating, when people needed them for warmth. These days, they're seen as fancy because of the fact that they are somewhat superfluous, except for in the winter if you're going outside. Here's a little story for you. I once went out with a rich, higher class friend of mine who, ironically, I was dressed much better than, because I was wearing a V-neck sweater over a shirt with a collar and tie and a suit coat, nice overcoat, silk scarf, and my fedora, and nice leather gloves. And when he saw me and realized that I was dressed much nicer than he was, he asked why I was so dressed up, as people often will when you are overdressed compared to them, because it makes them feel inferior. And they want to try to turn the situation around and make it seem like it is you who is wrong for overdressing and not them for underdressing. So you really shouldn't be getting too dressed up unless you have a good reason, especially if you are going to be the best dressed one there. And you do not want to be dressed too much better than everyone else or be overdressed for the situation. So to answer his question, I told the truth. I said I was dressed like this because I didn't like getting cold, which was the truth, and it was the winter, right? I have to wear a hat because I'm bald. I have to wear layers because I get cold. I have to wear gloves because my fingers get cold. And I just brought back the fancy scarf I was wearing from India at the end of my second world tour to prepare for the winter weather, because I hate the cold. And going from hot to cold was going to be a shock to my system. So I knew I was going to need to be bundling up. Now, if I was dressed that way in warmer weather, that would look silly. Obviously, I wouldn't be wearing a sweater or gloves, but even a vest and wearing a full suit like this in really hot weather in the summer can often be seen as overdressing, because it is not functional. It is the opposite of that, right? And especially because no one else will be doing it almost anywhere you go, even in businesses these days. Not if it is too hot. People generally don't let themselves get overheated for the sake of fashion now these days. And you never want to overdress, okay? It can cause social and other situational issues. If you're a macho man like me, you love Mafia movies. Now, unfortunately, they haven't come out with any good ones since the 90s, but fortunately, I've written my take on the great American novel, a new classic for our time, The American Mafioso, a short crime novella that is written in scenes just like a movie and is equally psychological as action-packed. It's a super short and exciting page-turner that will keep you on the edge of your seat right up through the shocking finish. Get yours at the link below for the super low price of just $5. And if you love mafia stories and gang culture and want to understand the truth behind the mafia from a more academic perspective and get into the history, culture, sociology, politics, business, and psychology of the mafia, then my new book, The Italian-American Mafia, A Socio-Political Perspective, is just for you. The Italian-American Mafia, called Cosa Nostra, was the most powerful organization this country has ever seen. So, what secrets can we men learn from old-school mafiosi to help us improve our lives today? This book gives a gritty inside look at the mafia, along with an intellectual analysis of it that makes this book perfect for someone who is just as nerdy as they are macho. Get yours in the link below for the low price of just $10. The perfect books for a man's man to read while on the toilet, for instance, or just on the couch, or in your favorite chair, or a throne perhaps, or anywhere you might sit and watch TV, except this time instead of watching TV, you're reading, so that you don't have to be stupid from only watching TV. And unlike most books, these aren't even boring. This one, in fact, is just as exciting as watching a movie if you were watching a movie in book reading form, while this one is extremely intellectually stimulating. Now, you can actually get smarter from reading while also being super entertained at the same time. It's a modern miracle of science. The science of the Mafia. The science of machismo. So hurry up and get your copies today before I have to jack up the prices, skim more off of the top on account of inflation, eating up all of my profits. I got a business to run, you know. But when it comes to the actual practical aspects of how to dress, the most important thing to how you look is the fit. You do not want your suit to be too tight or too baggy, okay? And it doesn't matter how nice the material is, how nice the suit looked on the mannequin, if it's not in your size, if it doesn't fit you very specifically in all the places that it needs to, it's not going to end up looking good. Now, slim and tight fitting clothing or baggier clothes go in and out of style at different times, oftentimes alternating in this sort of cycle. So over the course of your life, you may end up buying ones that err on either side. But it is best if most, perhaps almost all of your clothes are a middle-of-the-road classic fit. And it is most important that it be a good fit for your body. Now, the thinner the guy, the better tight clothes will look on him, while the larger the man, the better that larger, baggier clothes will look on him. A large man can even wear a double-breasted suit unbuttoned, like John Gotti made popular back in the 90s, which a thin man cannot do. If I were to try to do that and have my pig flapping, it would look silly. And another important practical aspect of fashion is to be dressing for the occasion. And it is a great idea to have your colors match the weather. And never dress much nicer than the occasion calls for. And never purposely dress nicer than your superiors or anyone above you in social stature. That is a very bad idea. And as I said, with men's fashion, less is more. You should always be more conservative and modest than fancy and showy, unless you are going to a very specific type of event. All right, so it is okay to be fancy and even showy and flamboyant and extravagant if you're going to parties where that is the thing to do, or going clubbing, for instance. One of the things I loved about being a nightclub promoter was that, especially on certain occasions, I could really go all out fashion-wise, use all the accessories that I never get a chance to use normally and such. But normally, underdressing is much safer than overdressing. Now, as you get older, it's kind of okay or a good thing to dress nicer and nicer as you get older, but you should be also dressing more conservatively the older you get. Now, when it comes to dressing up and how dressed up to get, there is a spectrum from casual to fancy, and it may not be what you think. You may think of getting dressed up to mean that the more clothes you put on, the more dressing up you are doing, as the phrase implies. But so putting on more layers of fancy clothes and putting on accessories and jewelry means, yeah, you're getting dressed up and looking fancy, but you might not be doing what is right for the situation, okay? Because there is a difference between formal and casual, okay? And certain things that you might be think of as fancy, certain ways of getting dressed up are not good for formal events. You see, the spectrum between formal and casual goes like this. More formal is more minimalistic and conservative, darker colors, smoother and shinier fabric with less patterns, less buttons and less pockets, and usually tighter fit. For more casual events or occasions, you're going to be able to be more progressive and use more accessories, right? So you're going to have more liberty there that you can take. Lighter colors are appropriate. Using fabrics with a more visible thread and textured fabrics, or cloth with patterns, especially more complex and busier patterns, like busier pinstripes or even plaid, and having more buttons and more pockets, and looser fit, of course, is more appropriate in more casual settings as well. So when it comes to being fancy and dressing up in a way that is not casual, but in which you are basically, you accessorizing a lot. That is not good for a formal setting where you would be certainly out of place, you know. So that's why, for instance, the most formal outfit is a tuxedo, which is very minimalistic, very few pockets, very plain, you know, is almost monochromatic, or sometimes is monochromatic. So that is what is on the far end of the formal side of the spectrum. Okay, and then on the casual side, on the far end of that, you have that George Clooney look where you're just wearing jeans and a button-down shirt with a blazer. So that is a spectrum of casual to formal in men's suits. Now, a suit should be made out of a nice cloth that is pleasing to the eye and the touch. All right, it should feel good on your body, right? And it really is a very pleasant feeling to be sort of adorning yourself with all these nice fabrics. And it should be made out of a good fabric, such as wool, right? And you should avoid these modern poly blends unless, you know, that's all you can get. And when it comes to shirts, white is the default, especially for business. Obviously here I went with the opposite, which is black. And going with a white or a light colored shirt is best in a business setting. I wouldn't recommend dressing like this in a professional setting. And don't just wear a color because it's masculine, like I said, like orange or yellow, for instance, you know, which isn't a good look. Or dress in a way that is meant to look macho, like, you know, like I'm doing. I have a sort of gangsterish type of appearance that some people might find, you know, intimidating at many workplaces. And as I said, you have to be secure enough in your masculinity to wear some cooler tones and colors that may seem feminine, but which look extremely classy and sophisticated. A black suit with light pink shirt, for instance, though pink may be a feminine color, it has the masculine coat encompassing it. So that suit is going to be a very sophisticated, classy, masculine look. That could also even be a bit gangster if you wanted it to be, by having it be a black pinstripe suit. Now, men's suit should fit you well and be comfortable. And, you know, it should be something that thus you shouldn't feel uptight in wearing, okay? Like, you should feel casual and nonchalant. You should be able to relax in it, and it shouldn't be hard to move around, and you know, it should fit well enough that you can move around any way that you need to. And that's another reason why you don't want to overdress. If you're starting to feel like your clothes are constricting you, either they don't fit properly or you are wearing too much of them for the temperature. And keep in mind, less is more for us men when it comes to fashion, so being overdressed compared to people you're with is a social faux pas you want to avoid. So do not overdo it, or, you know, be too fussy when it comes to putting your outfits together either. You don't need to put too much effort into putting together your suits. Men shouldn't be worrying about accessorizing too much. They don't really need to be accessorizing much at all. You know, you shouldn't be getting dozens of pairs of shoes and more ties than you'll ever wear, and all these collectibles of, you know, fancy garments and jewelry like cufflinks that you'll never wear, because you only really have one occasion to dress up that fancy once in a blue moon. And men are not women, so we shouldn't be like fashionistas collecting tons of fancy clothes that serve us very little purpose in our day-to-day lives. A man's fashion and style should simply be a part of his masculine self-image and how he presents himself to the world as a man consistently. It should define that you are definitely a man and not a woman, and tell someone a bit about what kind of male character you are. So are you a business person, and what type? Or are you more of the creative and artistic type? Or perhaps you are a darker personality, maybe more of a bad boy type. You can, of course, grow a beard and make yourself appear more masculine that way, since it's something men can do with their hair and, you know, their grooming, and women cannot. And you can do certain things with your style and image to make yourself look more masculine, or masculine in a certain way. You can use fashion to give certain impressions, such as being warm and welcoming, or big and intimidating, and of course, being macho. The suit may be a uniform fashion, but there's enough freedom of expression within that uniform for you to show the world a bit about who you are as a person, to express yourself and communicate through image and presentation. By use of different colors and patterns and different ensembles of different outfits with different matching garments, and the use of like tie versus no tie, formal versus casual, you know, and putting like a suit coat with jeans and even a t-shirt maybe these days when you're going casual, but, you know, still want to look manly and good. Maybe the weather is, you know, kind of warm, but, you know, you don't know if you would need a coat or not. So what do? You grab a suit coat, you put it on, you know, and find that looks better than what you're wearing a sweater or a windbreaker or a hoodie. No, that suit coat looks so much better while doing the same functional job. And if you need to take it off, you just sling it over your shoulder. It's a great look for a man in a social situation. And so even in a casual setting, you can be doing things with your clothing in order to communicate about yourself with your environment. You don't really need all that much to express your identity to the world through your masculine image. You can communicate all that you need to visually within the uniform of the men's suit. And of course, the rest of who you are has to be communicated through language with people who matter, obviously, right? But you'll find that so much of what you want to try to portray about yourself when you are wearing a traditional men's suit, you will be able to portray, and you'll be viewed as more manly, more sophisticated, and more respectable. All right, people will treat you with more class and respect when you wear a suit. Everywhere you go, you'll notice people are looking at you and treating you differently, which is going to be of great benefit to you. I think it's also great because of its uniform style and the fact that it is a uniform. It unifies all of us men under its masculine image and this outfit of the uniform called the suit. And today more than ever, men need this kind of masculine uniform to rely upon in order to express their masculinity to the world and say to the world, I am a man. Okay, because you do not want to be mistaken as someone who might psychologically identify as a female or someone who might be gay. The traditional male suit and this masculine uniform is a real great thing to sort of give men a unifying front in that they're all presenting in similarly masculine ways. And when I talk about at the beginning of this channel that these days men really need to present a unified front against feminism. So having a universal masculine uniform to rely upon in order to present a traditional male image to the world can be a very powerful sociological thing for us. So I'm a big advocate of wearing suits for this reason. I think we all need to present a strong unified front and have a strong masculine image to present against feminism. And having a strong male image is a very important and significant part of being masculine and expressing your masculinity to the world. Wait a minute. Now a word from our sponsor, me. Do you value the ability to use words to do things such as compose meaningful sentences and speak the truth? Did you know that here in this great country of America, you have the right to free speech? And so do I. And if you don't support people who are exercising that right, then you are probably a fascist dictator. Just like the YouTube algorithm, which stifles the content of patriotic people like me who dare to speak out against the gynocentric, matriarchal, feminist regime that has been aggressively taking over our country. And if YouTube isn't going to promote my content and is going to suppress it instead, I can only rely upon you, my viewers, to show your support. If you don't support free speech, we will stop having it, which is exactly what is already happening with YouTube videos that censor themselves getting promoted and explicit ones like mine getting shadow banned. So, if you like listening to me use my free speech, make sure to press like and share and donate whatever you can with the PayPal link below. Don't make me work for free and get censored like a fucking communist. And with the presidential election coming up, your donations can literally be used to fund my campaign to get into the White House and abolish the matriarchy once and for all. Literally. Who would you rather have as your president? An old limp-dick liberal leftist cuck with noodly arms who's probably never been in a real fight in his life? Or a good old-fashioned, misogynistic, patriarchal man's man like me, with balls big enough to stand up to women, and who you can count on to speak out against them and tell it like it is. Fight the feminazi dictatorship. Spread the message of masculinism. Keep my work alive.